thank you everybody for coming for this week's REA meeting. Bring it together, please, bring it together. Thank you everybody for coming to this REA meeting. So without further ado, I will have the privilege of bringing up our guest speakers. We have Gary Martinez today, as well as
Mike Hefner.
Mike Hefner, sorry.
And Ian Ozimec before. I got you. You want me to go first?
Yeah, go for it, yeah.
So I'm going to give you, well, I can go as deep and as shallow as you want on this, but I'll talk a little bit about what we do at Voight Real Estate Services. We're a commercial real estate brokerage firm. It's good to hear you talking about the things you're mentioning, because Argus and BOMA and some of these other training facilities you guys have available to you should take advantage of. You know, back when I graduated in 1983 from this school, which is a long time ago, we didn't have those tools, we didn't have this kind of networking. And in our industry, in fact, at Voight, we have about 200 people, about 24 Cal State Fullerton and alumni. So we have a lot of graduates, like Ian, for example, and myself, and generational graduates from this school that actually work here in Orange County in commercial real estate. I work with a firm called Voight Real Estate Services. I'm the chairman of the board, one of the founding brokers. We bought the company from our ownership in 2015, so we're privately held. We're a commercial brokerage firm, so we handle transactions, sale and lease transactions for various clients, private investors, private institutional investors, owner occupants, and corporate users. So it could be a FedEx, Bobcat, you name the company. We deal with a lot of those terms. We actually handle everything from the inception of a development, buying land, developing the project, finding the ultimate occupier, and then ultimately selling the asset as a lease investment. So kind of soup to nuts, commercial real estate. We focus, Ian does as well, on industrial, and our firm does 4 different facets. We're not deep into some of these, but we do retail, multifamily, office, and industrial. We're predominantly an industrial firm, and that's really been kind of the most lucrative sector other than multifamily, which doesn't happen to be our strongest suit. We have 2 offices in San Diego, 2 here in Orange County, one in Inland Empire, in Ontario, and then 1 in Torrance. There's about 150 brokers and 50 staff at our privately held company. I think over the course of the 40 years we've been in business, we've done over 60 billion in transactions. We're a pretty big local, kind of, I call us a regional player. You mentioned, I heard Cushman & Wakefield and CBRE. These are big firms, they're national platforms. We tend to compete directly with these companies because we have a big kind of institutional service line, but at a much smaller regional level, which is kind of cool because
Yes, sir. Can you clarify what industrial is in the commercial real estate sector?
Sure. It's anything you're manufacturing or distributing out of. Typically we have low percentages of offices to a warehouse facility. It could be manufacturing or distribution. We'll talk about a couple projects to your point. Do you mind bouncing through a couple slides? I'll tell you where to stop. You keep going. Low, high level, 64 billion transactions, about 58 million square feet, and the breakdown between sale transactions and lease transactions, 40 billion in sale and 20 billion in lease transactions. Right now it's at 16 CSUF alumni, those are brokers. We also have staff who are Cal State Fullerton alumni. So we tend to hire and have seen a lot of success from guys and girls coming from the state university system. When I started, it used to be all USC dominated, and the USC brokers tend to flare out pretty quickly because they're expecting a big payday right the day they started. It didn't work out quite that way, and the next generation of SC graduates that we're dealing with at other schools are actually hardworking. They work hard to get in, so it's a competitive environment. I probably get between 5 and 10 calls a week from people like you that are looking for positions in our firm. I can talk about what that looks like too if you have questions. So if you can bounce up to the next couple slides here. So that's me. I've been doing it for 40 years. Keep moving, not that exciting. Ian's much more dynamic, younger, and has a long career ahead of him. How long have you been with us now, Ian?
About 5 years.
5 years. So Ian attended school here, grew up in Newport Beach. He's friends with my son, and I'm friends with his Yeah, it's just a small little incestuous world, but, we do see a lot of kids coming out of Newport Beach, Grand Amara, and Newport Harbor high schools that are looking for positions at our company specifically. It doesn't mean the door's not open to everybody. And if you bounce up a little bit, I'll walk you through a couple of kind of quick case studies. This is a project that we're handling right now for Rexford. As a matter of fact, that came up earlier. It's a predominantly industrial firm. They're a real estate investment trust. Very active in Southern California and buying existing buildings and developing new state-of-the-art buildings like this. This is a building just down the street from you on State College, or off State College on P.A. Burton, right before you get onto the 91 freeway. On the right-hand side of your southbound, we sold a 5.7-acre site to Rexford for a company called Schreiber Foods. It's an infill, heavy manufacturing facility, manufacturer of yogurt and other food products, antiquated buildings. Rexford was one of 20 bidders. We tore down the building, buildings plural, built a new state-of-the-art 140,000 square foot building. By state-of-the-art, it's a certain clear height, it has a certain type of sprinkler capacity and loading capacity for almost any distribution use. And that building is currently offered for lease. We have a transaction we're working on that, if it's finalized, will be about a $20 million lease on top of a $24 million sale. So, 1 6-acre site in Anaheim or in Fullerton translated at $44 million worth of transactions. If you scroll down one more, that's actually the site plan for the building. So you can see the clear height, the number of loading doors, and you like to have a certain ratio. Usually it's about 1 door for 8,000 square feet of building area to have a true distribution type building. Really beautiful offices. It's built like a creative office space. So, but this office component is 2-story. It's about 9,000 square feet of the total building area. So that's by definition a state-of-the-art building in Orange County. Ian's Market is a little different than what I'm talking about component. But if you scroll one more for me. This is a project that's kind of an iconic site in Fullerton at the corner of Harbor Boulevard and Lambert Road. It was a 45-acre site owned and occupied by Beckman Coulter, which is a big medical instrument manufacturing company. They're on the site since 1956. We actually took the site to market and it took about 5 years to re-entitle it for residential. During the course of the Martinez, it was about, I'm trying to remember when we actually, I think it was about 2011 or 12 when we actually took it to market, secured a buyer that was going to convert the property to a residential development. And the city of Fullerton was pushing that direction pretty hard at that time, and they changed completely and did a 180 on the buyer. After 5 years of remediation and entitlement, they decided they did not want residential on this property. They wouldn't allow it to be rezoned. So in about 2 weeks, we went out and identified an industrial developer who stepped in and bought the property. Basically, the residential developer that had the property tied up flipped it for about a $15 million profit. Keep in mind, they never actually put any money in it other than the earnest money deposit into escrow. They put $1 million into escrow to type of the property, will entitle in it, and Beckman remediate the environmental condition. Flipped it, made a pretty nice profit in doing that, and then we sold it to a developer that ultimately built 7 new buildings. We retained 1 office building. It was an 8-building project, almost 1 million square feet, and about $250 million in total consideration between the land sale and all the lease and sale transactions. We sold 3 of the buildings, which were 663,000 square feet to Prologis for $123 million. And Prologis is another, it's actually the largest industrial REIT in the world, if you've heard the name. And they have offices and operations all over the world. So that was a pretty kind of a milestone project in North Orange County, and a couple things are nearby I thought might resonate with you. I'll let Ian talk about the one that he's got in here.
Yeah, thanks. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. Yeah, so Mike did a good job at introducing me. My name is Ian Ozimec. I'm with real estate, been with the company about 5 years. I went to Cal State Fullerton too, and when I was 19, I got my license, and I was working with my dad for some time, and then eventually started to intern at Voight in our Irvine office for a pretty notable team, and then just soon after that, just worked hard and just networked a lot, and was able to land a job at our Ontario office. And so a little bit more about the Inland Empire. It's Riverside and San Bernardino counties. It's a massive market with 700 million plus square feet of product, which is a lot. And so a little bit of what I do, so on my team I specialize in selling and leasing industrial land. So the Orange County is a little bit more what we call infill. A lot of the sites that Mike has sold recently that he just spoke to, those are a lot of the last rare remaining industrial sites. So those are very valuable. And in our market, some of the larger sites are now becoming harder to find. And so what we consider those are maybe 10-acre sites and above. And so what I do is I assemble different properties, maybe there's a couple different owners. And so I just wanted to run through this case study with you guys. I think it'd be interesting for you guys to understand. We had a almost 9-acre site in the city of Highlands, so think of San Bernardino. There was 4 different sellers. One seller was a meat processing facility on about 4 acres. That was an industrial property. The second seller was an investor who owned a very old apartment complex. The third seller was just a piece of vacant land, and the fourth seller was an old dilapidated church, so it was vacated. Nobody was really using it. And so what's really cool about this is that even though these were different, from what you see, different property types like multifamily, a church, they were all zoned industrial. And so none of the owners really knew that. So the value that we brought to them was educating them on that the highest and best value is actually a redevelopment project. So what we did was we explained to them that selling a property together rather than separately was worth a lot more. So in total, the assignment was assembling these land parcels, 8.91 acres, and we ended up selling it to a company by the name of Hillwood Properties. It's Ralph Perot Jr.'s real estate investment arm, and the sellers were really inclined to sell it together because of what I just mentioned. It was worth more together. There was more economies of scale, and they successfully purchased all the parcels back in, I believe, 2022 for about $13 million. And Hillwood will develop a state-of-the-art 187,000 square foot facility there. And then we put the site plan on the next slide. So yes, it's similar to the building that Mike was showing earlier. You have all your docks on one side, that's called a single rear loader. Yeah, it's a state-of-the-art facility. It'll be 32-foot clear. It'll have all the energy-efficient lighting, LED lighting, ESFR sprinklers, which are the state-of-the-art sprinklers that all developers install in their buildings. And yeah, that was it for that one. Thank you.
Gary, did you want to add? We've got a couple things after. Maybe we can talk together about the industry.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe what we could do, I'll just introduce myself really quick, and maybe we could just stand up here, and if anyone has any questions regarding brokerage, and you have an amazing experience and amazing knowledge here. I think a good time for us to learn from. And I can tell you, when I grew up in the industry, I got into business in 2001. I got to think about it a little bit. 2001. I was 21 years old at the time, so I got my real estate license when I was 20 years old. My first job was a on-site property manager, so I hear you talking about some management stuff here with MoMA, which I'm really excited to hear and to see. And so some of them don't sound very exciting, maybe some of those classes, but I can tell you they come into a really good hand, when it comes time when you're out there in the world. And it doesn't matter whether you are a broker, if you're a developer, or if you get into management, you get into appraisal, understanding all the different aspects as to what happens with properties, how they operate, how you collect income, how you pay expenses becomes extremely important. And so I'll tell you a little bit about my background. Again, my name is Gary Martinez. I'm with a different commercial real estate brokerage firm by the name of Asheville Associates. Okay, and there's multiple different brokerages that are out there that you've seen. I heard Christian Wakefield, I heard CBRE, you have Boyd, you have Asheville Associates. This gentleman right here had a card with KW Commercial. That was you. But there's a lot of different opportunities and different brokerages that you can go to. Now, when we say brokerage, okay, what does that mean? Brokerage essentially means is that we are helping two parties come together, right? It could be a buyer and a seller, and we're helping them bridge the gap in the sense of, hey, Mr. or Miss Buyer, I understand you're looking for a nice industrial building or office or retail or whatever it may be. Here's a property that we found for you that this seller is looking to sell, right? And so our job as brokers is basically to help seller and buyer come together so they have a successful transaction So make sure that the buyer is getting what they're looking for, whether it's for their business or for investment purposes. And the seller is looking to sell the property. Usually they're looking for the maximum amount of dollars, but sometimes time becomes really important for them as well. So maybe they're willing to risk a little bit of time in exchange for, or lower, in exchange for lower dollar amount in exchange for a quicker close. And so, so that's what we do as a broker, is essentially just getting two parties, putting them together, and we have what's called a fiduciary duty to buyer and seller to make sure that we act fairly with each of them as well. And so when you get into real estate, there's a lot of different types of industries that you can get into, such as brokerage, which the three of us are. Again, you could become a developer. A lot of people say, hey, I want to find land and I want to pick up a hammer and I want to start going at it and I want to build my own property, right? Which is something that could be available to you. While you're doing that, you might be learning about entitlements and learning about construction costs, a lot of things that go along with that as well. You might be interested in appraisals. Okay, so what appraisers do is essentially that they go out there and as they're looking at the market and they're trying to determine what's the value of the property. Okay, now when we look at values of properties, and we do this as brokers as well, there's different ways in order to determine value of a property. One is called a sales comp approach. That sounds familiar to anyone? Sales comp approach, very similar to, like, what is a typical 3-bedroom, 2-bath home sell for here in Fullerton, right? So you just compare. It's called a sales comp approach. Right. The next approach that you look at when we look at valuations is called an income approach. So meaning if you're going to buy an apartment building, right, that apartment building is going to be giving some income to the property, right? So how much would an investor pay in exchange for that income? So that income approach, the way we value income approach, is going to be something a little bit different on how we may value the comp approach. Like what does a typical apartment building sell for? We do look at that, but the income approach is going to be more heavily weighted. The third is going to be replacement cost, which is what is it going to cost if my apartment building burns down and I got to build it brand new? What's it going to cost for me to rebuild that apartment building or industrial building or retail center or whatever it is that we're talking about? Replacement cost becomes pretty important for multiple different things. One is to determine what if I just go buy a piece of land and build it brand new, right? Is it going to be more cheaper for me to build brand new, or is it going to be more expensive for me to build brand new, where it might make more sense to buy something existing than it is brand new? So that's why it becomes very important to understand these valuations. And kind of going back to property management is to making sure that each of those, the investment value of the property is continues to stay as high as possible, and the property is ran as efficiently as possible too. Property management is actually what I first got into when I first got into business. I was an on-site leasing agent at a multi-tenant industrial park. It was actually my first time where I met Mr. Mike Hefner over here because I was sitting inside an office and what I was essentially doing, like an apartment manager, right? I was kind of doing something very similar for an industrial park, right? And what an industrial park is, it's similar to an apartment building, where apartments you have a bunch of different tenants that live there. An industrial park is different, but similar, but different in the sense that we're not renting each of the units out to people that are there to live. We're renting out the units for people to work, right? And they might have like a wood shop. They might be cutting metal in there, or they might be doing distribution for e-commerce, for some type of Amazon type thing. They might be doing assembly, whatever it is that they need to do inside of that warehouse, which is kind of like a larger garage. Then that's what they're doing, and that's what they manage. And so I believe, right, at least for myself, and I think if any of you were to come to me and says, hey Gary, I have an opportunity to be an on-site leasing agent at this industrial park, at this office building, at this retail center, at this apartment complex, I think it's a wonderful way to get accelerated experience. So meaning that you are in the trenches day in and day out, right? So if someone has a light bulb that's burnt out, they're probably going to call you, right? So you're going to start learning about light bulbs and learning about electricity and learning about something that's called Title 24, which is something that's new. And all this stuff starts to come into play, because we start working with light bulbs, right? Other things that might come into play is you start learning about plumbing. You start learning about what these are called T-bars right here, T-bar system, the ceiling tiles that are here. You start to learn about that. You start to learn about air conditioning. HVACs are called. So we start learning about what are comfortable temperatures. And so all of this stuff, you're just forced to learn because that's your job, right? And then everyone's coming to you. If there's a problem, there's an issue, they're coming to you, and you just got to solve the problem. So how that helped me, because my first 5 years I was this on-site property manager, which was pretty cool, right? Because it allowed me to learn the business and get a paycheck. And at the age of 26, I just said 21, so at 26, I kind of put my hand up. I said, hey, you know what? Property management's cool, but you know what? I'm 26 years old. I'm hungry to learn the business more. I want to go out there and make the big dollars that I see some of these brokers that are making. How do I do that? Right. So one thing I did is to say, okay, what I did is I stepped away from property management and I got into what brokerage, which is a very close to now. And so with brokerage, typically, no one is paying you to show up to work. Right? No one's paying you because you're making calls. They could be, but typically that's not the case. Right? No one's paying you to go into the office. You only get paid if you close a transaction. Right? It's a commission-based job. Right? So you kind of kill what you eat. So meaning that if you do deals, you make money. Right? If you don't do deals, you don't make money. And typically, when an agent comes to us, comes to me, right, and says, hey, I want to become a broker. What does it take? What does it take? What do I got to do? Well, the first thing I tell a student or someone looking to come to business is that you got to work. You want to work hard. What does hard working mean? So I typically tell them, Mike, and you might think of something differently, but I tell my people, you got to be willing to work 7 to 7. At 7 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock. Okay. Might sound like a long time, but if you're serious, you're committed to business, I believe that's what it takes. Okay, and what's happening at 7 o'clock in the morning, right? You're going into the office. I do believe going in office. Go in office, and what you're doing is that you are start doing the research on the types of businesses that are in the area or in the geographical area that you're looking to focus on, right? So say you're focusing on, I want to focus on industrial properties here in Fullerton, right? So one thing you want to do is you want to know every single building that's here in Fullerton, and you want to know who the business owners are, you want to know who the property owners are, and you want to start calling, right? So from 7 to basically 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, you're doing your research. From 9 to 12, I'm telling everyone that's the golden hours is what I call it. The golden hours, and those are the reason I call it golden hours is because that's your time to make money. Right? It's your time to make gold. So during that time, where we are telling our agents that you should be on the phone and that you should be consistently prospecting, because there's really nothing else to do except prospect, which means look for business. Right? Hopefully during lunchtime from 12 to 1, you have an opportunity to have a lunch break, hopefully with a client. And again, from 1 to 4 o'clock, 1 to 5 o'clock, you're still on the phones, or you're out there in the streets, you're going door to door, you're passing out flyers, and you're learning the area, you're learning the business, you're touching, feeling, smelling, looking to see what's happening in your marketplace. So when you talk to these people, you can say, hey, Mr. Property Owner, I'm a commercial real estate broker. I pass by your property every single day. I work the Fullerton market. And I can't help but notice that you have all these vehicles that are parked outside. It looks like you have trucks that are parked outside that are honking, wanting to get in. It looks like you're out of space. May I introduce you, may I show you some properties that you may have an interest in taking a look at? It looks like you have a successful business. It looks like you can use some more space. Are you looking for more space, right? And so they just tell you, yes, no, I have this, I have that, whatever it is, but they tell you the story, right? Once you hear the story and they say, yes, there's a need, right? Now, as you are talking to all the different property owners, then what's happening is that when an owner says, you know what, I'm not looking to buy, but I am considering the sale. or I am considering to rent my property, to lease my property, right? So as you're talking to all the different people, again, we're doing brokerage work, right? We're pairing buyers and sellers with each other. What eventually happens is that we are the people that are bringing the deals together, right? And so that's what we do as brokers. Now, there's tools that are out there. You may have heard of LoopNet. You may have heard of CoStar, right? There's tools that are out there to help give information that us brokers can tap into to determine what's out there in the market. Maybe we use it as data points as well. And it's a good source for us to use, so we have some additional things to talk about. But ultimately, what we're doing is, whether it's on LoopNet, on CoStar, or if it's on no other platform, or using our own relationships, our goal is to bring the deal together, and essentially that's how we get it. I've been in the business for 24 years. It's been a wonderful way for me to feed my family, for me to go on some nice vacations, to do the things that I want to do. But it still is a grind. Meeting a grind, it's we work every day. And I tell everyone that gets into brokerage, we need to be willing to be committed. We need to be consistent, and we need to have confidence. Okay, and those three things sound really easy, right? Yeah, I'm committed. I'm confident. I'm consistent. But you know what? When you're calling day after day, hours after hours, and people are telling you no, stop calling me, right? It's hard to be consistent. It's hard to be committed, and it's hard to keep that confidence, right? But I believe every no leads you closer to a yes. So every time you get a no, right? Good. I got a no. I got a no. I got a no. I got a no. Because every no gets you closer to a yes. So every no gets you closer to an opportunity, to a meeting, and to do deals as well. So, yes.
Mr. Martinez, with all those no's, like when you finally land that deal, like what are your commissions looking like? Because all that effort's going into to close that deal, to make that transaction possible. Like what are the rewards?
Rewards could be very rewarding. It could be like, man, I did all this work, I already got paid. Sure. So it really depends as to what it is you're working on. And typically on a purchase, especially on a sizable transaction that Mike was talking about, I mean, those could be really, really nice commissions. They're not easy to do. It's stuff that we probably we're brand new business. We may not have an opportunity to land right away, but maybe, you never know. They can range all over the place, from as little as $1,000 to 30,000, 50,000.
Our biggest, last year at Boyd, we had one for $1,000, and we had one for $1 million. Wow. So it's a very big range of fees. Maybe I can add a few things to what Gary's saying too. So there's a couple of silos in the business, and I do this speech a lot, so I'm going to give you guys kind of how I break down this industry. You have the property management aspect that we've talked about, real estate brokerage and development and investment, considered to be the same. You have developers that will buy a property, build it. You have investors that will buy an underperforming property, reposition it, rehab it, and ultimately maybe they sell it or they retain it in the portfolio. And then you have the finance piece, which nobody's always talked about tonight. So there's really those four silos, and you look at it from the inception of the project. Raw land, we connect the developer with the owner, we sell the property, gets developed, gets leased. There's a financing element to all of that, which means the capital side. We're raising equity for the transaction, and you're also putting debt with maybe an institutional lender of some sort. It could be a life company, it could be a bank. And then ultimately, when the asset is stabilized and leased, it's managed. And so there's all those aspects to what we do. And as a student, I wish I'd known more about all these things, like development is a good source of income and wealth building. I look at it as generating income's great. What about wealth? It's one thing to go pick up the phone, make calls, and deal with problems, negotiate transactions, but how do you build passive long-term income? And you can do that on the investment and development side. So a lot of people in our industry start as a broker because they learn the grassroots side of it, the business, how to negotiate a lease, what's important to tenants, what's important to owner-occupants. If they start to understand transaction volume and how to manage a transaction, and they move into the development and investment side, where they're buying property for their own portfolio, or they're going to work with a big investment firm, whether they become an ownership or have an ownership interest, or they become a principal of the firm. There's a lot of different facets to the industry, And within our, I talked about earlier, within our industry, we all three are industrial, but there's the multifamily, the retail, the office, and hospitality component. So there's really 5 silos within our industry. So if I was a young person looking to get into the business, I really want to determine what market do I want to work in? What product type do I really want to work on? And then it becomes important, the firm, like am I talking, do I want to be on a national platform because I want the ease of making a call, I'm in CBRE, really easy for an institutional ownership to say, well, we hired CBRE, we hired Cushman & Wakefield or Colliers, one of these big national firms. It's a really easy decision for that ownership or the asset manager who's really trying to cover their tracks on a decision that they made. We're more entrepreneurial, we're regional. Gary's firm is a smaller shop, but it's an entrepreneurial shop here too. And it's a little easier, different kind of dynamic in how we go about doing our business. We don't rely on national presence. But for a guy who's just going to work North Orange County industrial property, Voight or Asheville are great decisions. If you want to go to the capital market side where you're doing multi-billion-dollar transactions, I think the largest I've ever done is probably a $500 million sale in various pieces of property we phased out and rolled out in the marketplace. But we had to have a capital market platform, which means you need the Argus skills, you need the underwriting, you also need the boots on the ground, lease analysis, everything that goes into analyzing an investment to present that to the marketplace. We have a 500,000 square foot portfolio of 2 business parks in Garden Grove. One in Santa Fe Springs is in the market right now. We're going through the bidding process. But there are 500 tenants at the interface with property management company put together an offering memorandum and then present it to the right buyer pool. So that's a different skill set that you commonly wouldn't get in a regional firm, but we're able to compete with a national platform. So if you're interested in the industry, you want to know what market, what product, what firm, and then ultimately, most importantly, which team you're going to work with. So you'd want to start identifying teams and give them one. Yes.
So 2 questions. One, what part of industrial real estate do you like the best? And then 2, if you weren't in industrial, what else would you be in?
Good question. I'd be surfing in Costa Rica. That'd be my primary goal. So the industrial is pretty broad because you can deal with product where they're making, biotech companies that are in an industrial space. It could be something very high finish with clean rooms and very sophisticated manufacturing processes, or it could be something very simplistic like a warehouse with a guy on forklift. But if you go to an Amazon warehouse, now you've got a very complex infrastructure and it's a very high-end distribution facility. So I like everything industrial because it's got 4 walls, it's concrete tilt-up construction typically, and low office finish, which gets more complicated when you start getting into office uses. So I also like investments. I like running numbers. I'm a finance major. I have my MBA from here as well. Finance is really kind of what gets my juices flowing quite a bit. So I like doing the investment side of it, but I do like doing the industrial aspect. So really anything industrial. I don't think you pigeonhole yourself in one product. Gary mentioned a multi-tenant park that he was working on. Well, that's a good way to get into industry where you're working on small 1,000 to 3,000 square foot units, negotiating leases on behalf of an ownership, and you have your name on a sign, build some, you have a presence in the marketplace, and some identity in the business community. So I wouldn't pigeonhole myself into saying just do warehouse distribution, but if you work a market like Ian does, you're doing 100 to 300,000 square foot deals in your sleep. In North Orange County, 100,000 square foot requirement is uncommon, and 100,000 square foot transactions are more uncommon right now. So, and I'll note that we're in a down cycle right now. The industrial market's actually softened after 3 years of absolutely astonishing growth because of COVID. But COVID really drove our industry to record highs, and values tripled over the course of 3 years. Lease rates did the same. They've fallen back considerably. So there's a cyclical market. As long as there's movement in our marketplace, we can be successful and transact. What we don't like is stagnant markets where nobody's doing anything. And that's it when sellers and buyers and landlords and tenants are totally disconnected on expectations. So if, again, going back to if you're interested, I mean, out of curiosity, how many in the room are even remotely interested in commercial real estate brokerage? So a fair amount. Okay, so look for firms. You start to see signs. You guys are welcome to contact us. We can circulate my email, Gary's and Ian's, and yeah, we can put you in touch with firms that we think you might want to be talking to and some teams. We, as I said, get a lot of calls from people your age looking for opportunities. There's internship roles, which I highly encourage you to do if you're a sophomore, junior, even going into your senior year. It's an ideal way to get an intro into the company, understand the industry, see if it's something you really like to pursue. But an internship route is a good way to start. What you ultimately want to do, or at least what we do at our firm, we hire what's called a runnership, where we create a runnership position for somebody who's like engaged as a broker. You train for a year at our firm. You get a nominal salary. It's not much, believe me. And then your hope is, you know, you may need 20 to 30, probably 30 to 40,000 depending on the company you work with as an intern. Yeah, you really want to be hitting 100,000 to 200,000 to 300,000 net after that years involved. We don't really look for people that aren't going to make 200,000 to 400,000 a year. That's really kind of our sweet spot. And so it could be a really lucrative business, and if you do very well, you can get 7 figures on a year in, year out basis. But it does take hard work. And yeah, and by the way, I want to distinguish, we say brokers. That's what we call ourselves in our industry. Most people that have a title for practical purposes are just agents. So we say broker, there's a little, so California, state of California issues a brokerage license, but they also issue an agent's license. Actually, I'm a broker. You're an agent. We can still do the same things. I'm a broker, but I have my brokerage licensing at our company, so at our brokerage company. So it's probably a lot of information, and some of it may be salient, some may not, but any questions that we can ask? Go ahead.
I know you mentioned that you're commission-based, Gary, so I wanted to ask you, what other sources of income would you recommend, or did you have during those times where maybe it's like maybe a couple weeks where you're trying to secure a buyer or seller, whatever it may be, or a lease agreement? What other sources of income kind of kept you afloat, if you had?
Yeah, good question.
Zero.
Yeah.
For me, I had a window washing business. I was always doing answer for Gary. So I was working 2 jobs while I was building a brokerage career. So you really need to know how to manage your cash flow, and it does take hard work. But if you start working on smaller transactions, you can build income, and you can build to where it's a relatively consistent income stream. But it's tough. You said it's a grind. It is a grind. I've been doing it for 40 years. January 1st, I'm back to 0, and it is a grind again. So you gotta love the grind.
Yeah, when I got into this 2021, in 5 years, 2026. From 2026 to like the middle of 2027, good times to be in any type of real estate. Towards the end of 2027 or 2007, 2008 and 9, right, the great financial recession, right, was the perfect time for me to enter brokerage, right, where there wasn't a whole lot of brokerage activity. So during that time, I mean, to make $1,000 was tough. It was tough, right? But I believed in a couple things. I believed in myself. I believed in the industry, that I was willing to sink, right? Sink or swim. I was willing to sink because for me, right, which it goes for maybe some of you that are here, that maybe you don't have a whole lot of financial responsibility, maybe not a whole lot of responsibilities because of family that we have to feed the family. And so I was willing to sink or swim, and I believed in myself, I believed in the business. And I just grinded it out, and I just did what I got to do to make that income.
So, it's kind of question for you three, and I have a couple questions, but the main one that I want to ask is, how did you guys make your first deal? I know cold calling was a way, but
Okay, the first skill for me was literally what Gary described, knocking on doors, tended to outgrow their space, needed more space. Back when I started, it was very complicated to get together data on what's available. Now we have computer multiple listing services very easily generate a list of available properties. You can have a survey in front of the client in a couple hours. So
I know you also mentioned researching properties. With Matrix, it's usually just residential. So what platforms do you use?
You know, we're a totally different animal. So we
I
have
know.
CoStar, which is known to most people that provide a lot of statistical information for occupancy of these rates. The service that all three of us use is called AIR, American Association of Industrial Realtors, and they do a really good job. So it depends on what market you're in. In North Orange County and Inland Empire, that's your database primarily, I think, for availabilities. And then we use different records and services for ownership and things of that nature. So information is not the problem anymore. It's how you use it.
Yeah.
It used to be information was the problem.
Yeah. We got a lot of information on our phones.
So, quick question for you. I think a lot of us are highly interested in real estate or going for the licenses or brokerages. But it's going to be a couple of years for us to get our licenses and then finally start working in firms and other stuff. What resources like books or podcasts can we start focusing on now?
I have quite a few.
I wouldn't recommend the ones I listen to. Because capital market stuff and they're way above the level you want to focus on right now. But by the way, getting your license is relatively easy is what you do after that. And go ahead. It sounds like you have a couple.
Yeah, I mean, all I do, I literally think breathe and sleep commercial real estate. If I'm not what I found, if I'm what I found, I'm 100% found. But there's my favorite podcast is called Commercially Speaking. Okay, the person there is Bull Barron. He's a CCIM, and you've heard the name. Yeah, he's been in business a long time, and so I listen to a lot of his stuff. Santa Massimo, what he is, he's actually a coach for us commercial real estate brokers, and he's teaching us how to get out there and find business. And so he has a little podcast as well. And so there's a lot of stuff that's out there. There's a lot of books I can give you as well. One of my things that really changed my career was actually really entrenching myself and trying to learn how to negotiate. Once I learned how to better negotiate, I felt like what I did is able to increase my relationships, right, with my clients, along with the opposing brokers. And so the book I recommend for negotiation is Never Split the Difference. And it really talks about on how to manage relationships and how to increase relationships. Because when you're doing negotiation, it can become intense, right? And relationships could split apart because we're not negotiating. That's not our goal, right? We're a relationship business oriented, and so we want to one that I really recommend.
One quick question. So with the tech industry, rising, is there any kind of way that you guys are leveraging AI tools when it comes to lead generation or specific product in the market for something that, it's a that I think it's sort of just brokerage is value in the long run. AI in your business?
Some of our junior brokers are doing letters, introduction letters and solicitations with AI, with ChatGPT, and they do a pretty good job. In fact, I've put those letters in from my junior associates for once. I could have written that letter, which means I no longer value. So I don't know, are you using it at all?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we'll use like maybe ChatGPT. We'll plug in maybe like a couple paragraphs of a lease form that we use, and obviously we understand it, but maybe you prompt it to say, hey, explain this to someone like it's their first time as a landlord, understanding this section of the lease, and maybe you don't verbatim copy and paste that, but it gets your wheels thinking of different ways to explain things to maybe a newer owner. Or someone completing their first lease as a tenant, usage sometimes. But yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I mean, I think it'll be used more in the future.
I use it every day. I use it more than Google. I really do. ChatGPT, I create custom GPTs in it. There's another program called Perplexity. If you're in Perplexity, Claude. I use those quite a bit as well, but ChatGPT is my main one. I'll tell you what, one thing, if you really want to learn like that subject, whether it's real estate or you have for your own classes, if you upload some documents that you're trying to learn into ChatGPT, And then what I've done is I use another program called Suno, which is another app, to make songs. And so what I do is go to ChatGPT, make me a song on this information, I just upload it, right? And so what it does, it creates a song, I'll copy and paste, put it in Suno, right? I'll say, hey, make it in a rap form, make it in a country form, make it in whatever form it is, right? And they got some really cool beats. And then after what ends up happening, it's like, hey, this is a pretty cool, catchy song. And so what I've done, because I teach CCIM courses, and so we have different modules, and I've created a song for every single one of my modules. And the songs are so cool that when I'm in my car with my family and my kids that are 9/11, they're like, hey, Daddy, will you put on Renner's Paradise for us? Oh, we got it, play. We're like, rock it out. And so what's cool is that these kids, my kids are 9 and 11 years old, and they're singing these songs, but at the same time, they're learning about commercial real estate. And they're having fun. So anyway, that's something that I've done, right? Might sound corny, but I promise you, it works. Right? That's
So you
AI
said for your exams coming up.
It works. If you need any help with your exams, I'll show you how to create a song for that.
This question is more towards you. You're 26, right? So 27. You started when you were 21?
I mean, so technically, I mean, when I was 19, I was a sophomore, and I got my license, and so while I was here, finishing school, I would work for my dad, along with other jobs. But yes, so technically 19.
But with his dad used to be a broker at our firm.
Yeah.
He was doing the same type of business.
Yes, same product type, same market.
I'm 19. I have my real estate license. I'm almost gonna turn 21. I'm gonna be heading towards like where you were at one point. What advice can you give me? Really, I have no family members that are in real estate. I'm the first one.
Right.
So
Yeah, no, I think having your license by the time you graduate is super valuable, because what happened was when I was a senior and I was an intern at our Irvine office, what I was doing was I was already in the office every day, right? So I was meeting with other senior brokers, and I was able to have lunches with them and really pick their brain. And so eventually when it came time for me to be offered a job in our other office, I didn't have to go get my license and then study and wait. So by the time I graduated, it was only a month or two, and then I was hired. So that's one piece of advice I would say, is that if you want to get into brokerage right out of college, I would say try to study for your license, maybe when you're not so busy with your custom learning courses, maybe in the summer.
And to add to what Ian said, and I mentioned earlier, intern, that's the most important thing. Independent of having a license, you don't need your license yet. You should be looking for an internship position. It can be at a brokerage company, it can be at a developer, it can be at a finance firm, something related to commercial real estate. Residential is fine, it's a totally different world. And if you're in this classroom, you're probably not headed that direction. If you are, good for you. But it's a very professional industry. We don't work on weekends. As Gary said, you're working 7 days a week. I think it's an 80-hour-a-week job, period. But if you have a phone in your hand, you can work. So I think you should be looking at all different facets of opportunities to intern.
how's your company in Torrance doing? I live closer to that area.
That was my company.
In Torrance, you said you have.
Well, it's a small office. We have 6 brokers there. They're all very successful. And they could be looking for an internship position. Those contacts that I have, I should say calls I get are from people who want to be here in Orange County. But no, we have a pretty vital local office here. So by all means, email us and we'll connect you.
Okay.
Yeah.
May I have your contact?
Oh, yeah, can you send it to whoever? But
That's the networking part after.
Send Kenya an email. She's right.
And I know you had a question, right? You still have it?
It kind of
Bogged up. I got it in a second.
I was just wondering, like, how would you say that the multifamily market is, or like working in that sector? Like, how is it different than like industrial? Like, what would you say that's like, and then how is it different than?
Wait, which kind of real estate was it? What was the first part of it?
Multifamily.
Oh,
Like, how
multifamily.
is it working in that? How is that?
There's
how is
2
it
big
different?
differences. So multifamily, unless you're an asset manager or property manager, which is a perfectly respectable place in the industry, is going to be investment transactions only. So in industrial, we can do user transactions where somebody buys a building for the business, where they lease a building. And by the way, lease transactions could be $100 million. I mean, the commissions on lease transactions are usually a full fee. You could have a $5 or $6 million leasing commission. There's a project in Fullerton where they paid out $20 million worth of leasing commissions on Orangeburg Avenue, on the old chemical park site. That was on one transaction, I believe with Samsung. So the nice thing about industrial real estate is you have people who lease buildings, and you can be compensated on lease, you can be compensated on the sale. It's another user. Multifamily really is going to be more just investment driven. So, which is perfectly great, and it's still a strong demand, and it's a great market to be in, but you're really going to get a sales broker only. The nice thing about office, retail, and industrial, especially, is you do leases. So, that's a big difference. Out of curiosity, how many in the room want to raise your hands on brokerage? How many are investment or development and leaning towards that sector? Okay. And then what about property management? And nobody's thinking about real estate finance.
Yeah, I'm a finance major, but.
Yeah.
All right, let's give them a big round of applause.